In the last episode, Oda Nobunaga attempted to solidify his authority over central Japan by going to war against the Asakura clan. However, a betrayal by the Azai clan, to whom his sister was married, would inevitably lead to the massive battle of Anegawa. Nobunaga would come out victorious, yet he now found himself surrounded by enemies. And now, with an ever-growing tension boiling over the central region, he must contend with his rivals and ensure the stability of his newfound power. What had once been a manageable situation for Oda Nobunaga had now turned into a precarious one. By 1570, the Oda clan now rested between enemies to the north and enemies to the west, along with the threat of the radical Iko-Iki sprinkled within. Luckily, Nobunaga was surrounded by competent and loyal commanders who each exhibited the very finest of strategic thought and battlefield heroism found throughout feudal Japan. I have touched on many of his retainers before. Figures such as Shibata Katsuie, Maeda Toshie, Niwa Nagahide, and Hashiba Hideyoshi. Yet another prominent figure was about to enter the mix, Akechi Mitsuhide. If we remember back to episode 22, Mitsuhide had been instrumental in getting Ashikaga Yoshiaki to reach out to Nobunaga, granting him the justification he needed for his march on the capital. Thus, Nobunaga owed much of his current power to Mitsuhide. In return, Mitsuhide had become one of Nobunaga's senior retainers, and one of the more important figures leading Nobunaga's armies against his foes to the west. For the most part, the main threat to the Oda rule in the west was the Miyoshi clan, who had previously held the highest amount of influence over Kyoto and the Ashikaga shogunate. Yet, ever since the death of their former daimyo, Miyoshi Nagayoshi, in 1564, the clan had become disjointed and feeble. So much so that they were unable to stop the Oda from sweeping them out of the capital, and were now being slowly pushed out of Honshu by Nobunaga's armies. However, this also brought the Oda closer to another major threat: the main power base of the Iko-Iki at Ishiyama Honganji in modern-day Osaka. The radical followers of the Jodo Shinshu faith known as the Iko-Iki had established control over a plethora of locations, and although they were not formally linked together, it can be seen that they all upheld the same mindsets and stood together against common enemies. The Iko-Iki had become a larger nuisance to the Oda than many of their actual clan rivals. By the 1570s, the Iko-Iki had become a major powerhouse throughout central Japan, even ruling over the entirety of Kaga province to the north. This was due to their various temples, which acted as hubs of influence, their strong economical power, having control over many important trade routes, and their appeal to all the suppressed lower classes of society, attracting anyone from ronin to peasant. They were vicious hornets who every daimyo feared, and their most formidable nest was known to be the most heavily fortified temple in the entire country, Ishiyama Honganji. Nobunaga knew the Iko-Iki needed to be eradicated if he was to have any semblance of stability over the Kinki region. Thus, in August of 1570, roughly a month after his victories at Anegawa, Nobunaga and Mitsuhide began efforts to lay siege to Ishiyama Honganji. He ordered the construction of various fortifications around the vast complex, to which the Iko-Iki forces responded by launching a massive night raid against Oda positions a month later, severely weakening the siege lines and allowing the warrior monks to continue to hold out. It should also be noted that the Iko-Iki had heavily adopted the use of Western firearms and began using them impressively. Behind their fortified walls of Ishiyama Honganji, the monks were able to effectively use their matchlock Teppo to formally hold off any attempt by the Oda to assault the fortress. This may have left a lasting impact on Nobunaga, who was an ardent practitioner of Western firearms himself, as the way in which the monks used their Teppo behind fortifications proved to be devastatingly efficient. This ensured that the siege of Ishiyama Honganji would continue indefinitely. Yet the warrior monks of Honganji were not the only militant holdout of monks that had earned Nobunaga's aggression. A year prior, he had lost a battle to the monks of Ogie Castle, resulting in the death of his brother Oda Nobuoki. And two other sites he would come to battle the monks at would be Mount Hiei and Nagashima. And it is the story of Mount Hiei that can be seen as a turning point for Nobunaga and the most brutal in terms of his conflicts against the monks. As the war continued between the Oda and the Azai Asakura coalition, following the Battle of Anegawa, the Tendai monks of Enryakuji Temple atop Mount Hiei had become equally hostile to the Oda and began lending their support to the Azai and Asakura. And since Mount Hiei sat literally just to the north of Kyoto, this could not be allowed, as it posed an immediate threat not only to the capital, but also to Nobunaga's lines of communication. Now, before I tell of Nobunaga's actions against Mount Hiei, I want to first give some brief background information on Mount Hiei and its significance. The nearly 800-year-old temple of Enryakuji atop Mount Hiei was a cultural megacenter. Not only was it the headquarters of the Tendai sect of Buddhism in Japan, but also its position within the area known as the Demon Gate signified that it stood as a shield protecting the capital from evil. It also housed one of the largest armies of warrior monks in the entire country, who had frequently marched down to Kyoto to enforce their religious control over the city. Knowing this information may help us better understand Nobunaga's next set of actions, as what he would do was completely unexpected. Perhaps he had simply grown weary of being constantly surrounded, or maybe he wished to make a statement against all temples that opposed him. Whatever the case, what he would do to Mount Hiei would simply be remembered as an atrocity. In 1571, commanding an army around 30,000 strong, and against the wishes of many of his retainers, Nobunaga ordered the mountain surrounded. He then directed his soldiers to begin scaling the side of the mountain, killing anyone who stood in their path. Once at the top, they set fire to the historic temple and slaughtered anyone who attempted to flee. By the end, Enryakuji was reduced to ashes, and thousands of civilians and monks alike were dead. Surviving Tendai monks would later be allowed to rebuild Enryakuji, yet Mount Hiei would never be able to have an army again. This is really where we can begin to see a change within Oda Nobunaga, where previously he could be seen as one of the more unorthodox leaders in feudal Japan. The massacre at Mount Hiei starts to showcase a more cruel side to him. That same year, Oda forces under the command of Shibata Katsuie and Sakuma Nobumori also launched the first of 4 sieges against the Iko-Iki stronghold of Nagashima in Ise province. Their first attempt would fail, yet the Oda would maintain the pressure. By 1572, back in the capital, things were abysmal between Nobunaga and Shogun Yoshiaki. It was clear Yoshiaki was now desperately reaching out to various daimyo in attempts to drive out the Oda. Yet, as we have seen thus far, no one has proven capable enough to do so. Yoshiaki needed someone strong, a mighty clan that rivaled the Oda in size and number, a clan that could easily reach the Oda. The two most realistic candidates for Yoshiaki were none other than the Mori clan to the west, or the Takeda clan to the east. Of the two, the Mori were unlikely to head to war against the Oda just yet, and this was for 2 reasons. First off, the Mori were recently at war with the Otomo clan of Kyushu, another powerhouse to the southwest. However, even more pressing was Morimoto Nari's failing health. By the summer of 1571, Motonari, the great patriarch of the Mori clan who had seen the clan grow from insignificant to mighty, had finally passed away, most likely fearing a drop in stability if they were to march east against the Oda. Motonari's grandson and current head of the Mori clan, Mori Terumoto, would decide to ultimately not move against the Oda just yet, although they would inevitably go to war in the years to come. The story was different to the east, as the Takeda had become arguably the strongest power east of Mino. Takeda Shingen now stood in a prime position to lead a massive army westward to crush Nobunaga. Ultimately, we will see that it is the legendary Takeda Shingen who will answer Yoshiaki's call for aid and embark on his own march to the capital. So, what can we learn? Although the Oda faced off against many hostile clans surrounding the capital, Nobunaga faced an even more insidious threat in that of the Iko-Iki and other prominent temples that formerly opposed him. This would lead him to lay siege to the formidable temple fortress of Ishiyama Honganji and the temple of Nagashima in Ise province, both initially failing to capture the fortifications. However, he would have far more success at another location, Mount Hiei. It was at Enryakuji Temple atop Mount Hiei where he would commit his most brutal act yet, burning the historic temple and slaughtering thousands. A year later, in desperation to remove Nobunaga from power, Shogun Yoshiaki now reached out to the powerful Mori clan to the west and the mighty Takeda of the east. And although the Mori would soon go to war against the Oda, it is Takeda Shingen who will ultimately take up Yoshiaki's cause and begin his campaign against Nobunaga. In the next episode, Takeda Shingen goes to war, first marching against the Tokugawa clan and engaging Tokugawa Ieyasu at the Battle of Mikategahara. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most informative.